Welcome to the messy middle of entrepreneurship, unfiltered and unapologetic. Uncensored Entrepreneurs, hosted by Starr, Robert Wall, and Tina Torres-Wilson, brings you real stories from the trenches of building a business. Those late nights, hard lessons, big wins, and everything in between. This is where the truth about entrepreneurship lives. No fluff, no filters, just raw, honest conversations with founders who have lived it. So, if you're over the highlight reel and you're ready for the real deal, hit play. Most people start a business to gain freedom, only to end up working around the clock and wondering if it's even worth it. Donna Dube is here to flip that script. She's a certified director of operations, a business growth strategist, a host of the CEO Amplify Podcast. She helps small business owners escape the hustle and grind cycle and step into the role of confident, strategic CEO so they can actually grow without the burnout. Donna brings years of experience in project planning, strategic growth with 6- and 7-figure businesses, and she knows exactly what happens when you stop chasing the to-do lists and you start running your business with real intention. So if you're feeling stretched thin, the bottleneck in your own business, this episode is for you. Donna, welcome to Uncensored Entrepreneurs.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
We're excited to have you, Donna.
Let me tell you, this week, this is what I needed.
We all experience that burnout, right, Tina?
And I think this time of the year, too, it gets even worse. And if you're anything like me, you love to-do list. If it's not on my to-do list, I'll add it to my to-do list so I can scratch it off if I did it.
Right.
I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. And you, as a CEO and an entrepreneur, I also think that you have to be available for your clients 24/7.
Yes, 100%. And I was right there for a lot of years. So I come by this honestly. I sound now like I really know what I'm doing. But at the beginning, I was right there. The to-do list, the dopamine hit when I checked something off, it was all good. So I hear you, Tina. But the truth of the matter is, I got to a point where, luckily I wasn't at burnout where I needed to be hospitalized or shut the whole business down. But I was at a stage where I was working 24/7. For me, it was great. I enjoyed what I'm doing. I loved my clients. It was wonderful. But my friends and family pretty much ignored, right? My kids were teenagers at the time. Mom, could you come to a couple of my baseball games at least?
And can you be off the phone when you're at my games and be present?
And actually pay attention. So that was me, 100%. And I finally hit a wall when my husband said, listen, something's going to happen here. Something's going to break. You need to change what you're doing. That stung a little bit, to be honest with you.
From your husband, who he knows everything, right? That had to have stung a little bit.
Yes. And so I was like, wait a second. No, what I'm doing here is good. But when I took a step back, he was right. I was just on one track to burnout. I just hadn't got there yet. So that's when I really had to do some introspection and really reflect on, okay, how do I continue to run this business and grow this business without burning myself out, without destroying my family and the things that really matter to me?
And that's so key, Donna, which is why I'm glad we're talking about this as a whole, because we all have these good intentions. In fact, in many cases, we as entrepreneurs, our motivation, our why is our husbands, wives, our children, it's retirement, it's all these goals that we want to hit. And so the reason why it stings so bad, right, is because we think, wait a minute, I was doing all of this for us. This is why I work so hard. But you're right. If our why at the end of the day is being ignored in the process of reaching goals, success, whatever that may be, then what is it all really for, right? Because we're here today, but we know that it could all be gone tomorrow. I love this idea. So let's continue on and unpack your journey. What led you, like you said, your husband brought this idea up. You were like, wow. And then you realized it's so true. What were the things that made you shift? What was that big shift?
I also want to get our listeners to see what burnout is. What are the symptoms? What are the things that are happening before you hit that burnout piece.
So I think that's the sneaky thing about burnout is it's a silent killer, if you will, right? It's not like you wake up one day, oh, I'm burnt out. It's slowly growing. It's that flame that continues burning behind the scenes. And so lots of people will notice I'm more tired, I'm more irritable. The things I used to enjoy, my passions, the fun things I like to do, I no longer have time for, nor do I want to do. I've got more headaches. So there are some physical symptoms, but again, a lot of us ignore them for the sake of what I'm doing.
So let's talk a little bit about that effort, Donna. So we're trying to grow our businesses and everyone's hustling, we're putting in more effort, but you talk a lot about clarity and leverage. So how do you support your clients when it comes to that? What recommendations do you have for our audience?
A lot of it comes down to being strategic with the decisions we make. And by that, I'm not just referring to who I hire or what marketing platform I'm going to go on, but actually my day to day, how I run my week, how I run my month, how I run my quarter, so that I can focus on the highest priority tasks. So a framework I like to use is pretend everything in your business would fit into two buckets. One is a maintenance and one is growth. So things that go in the maintenance bucket are updates to your website, sending out emails, posting on social, following up invoices, bookkeeping. All those things, yes, they have to happen to keep our business running. But the real question is, do they have to be done by you, the leader and CEO? The growth level tasks, that's where the real return on investment is. Those are the tasks that you as leader have to focus on. You can't delegate, you can't automate those types of things. So partnerships, networking, sales, if you're doing sales calls within your business,
Coaching calls,
right? That one to many, that's the area where you shine, right? Coaching, teaching in someone else's mastermind, speaking on stages, whatever those are for your business, you got to do that. Coming on podcasts. I can't substitute somebody else on my team to come here. And you can't either.
Good, but it would be completely different.
Right? Thinking about those things that are growth level tasks, they really move the needle in your business. And that's where you need to be spending your time. So I often say to my clients, yes, you've got a small business, but you're still the CEO. Does it look the same as Microsoft and Apple? No, of course not. They've got a board of directors. They've got tons of VPs under them. You need to wear those hats when you're the CEO of your small business. And so you need to protect your time, one of your greatest assets, and make sure that you're spending a reasonable amount of time in those growth tasks. We have a framework where it's a CEO scorecard, and it's just a way of gamifying it. So different tasks within your business will be given a different score. And the more revenue you want to bring in each year, the higher CEO score you need, the more time you need to be spending on those growth level tasks. So if we've got a solopreneur who's just starting out, of course, they're going to be wearing all the hats. And right now, all the admin, all the marketing, all of that is going to be on their plate. But as they start to grow, they can bring in some help, a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and they start to let go of some of those tasks so they can focus on the growth level.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. I've been through all phases, brick and mortar, and speaking for my co-hosts as well, more of that corporate environment, having employees, switching over to a VA model, and mindful of that meme or that image where it says, today as an entrepreneur, I'm having my very first staff meeting, and it's just you sitting there, right? 6 or 7 different name tags in place, man. It does feel like that quite often when you're just starting out. But I love this idea of CEO energy. I mean, that's exciting because it is a small business, but you're treating it already as you're prepared. The end in mind, you're preparing for that growth before it ever happens.
Yes.
And that is so key. I don't think a lot of people are doing that in their small business models.
Yes, 100%, because we get stuck and pulled into the weeds. I'm going to do this task, I'm going to answer that email, I'm going to do this, going to do that. And that CEO time for really thinking strategically and looking at the data and deciding what my next move is going to be, that always ends up getting pushed to the side. I'll do that later, right? And I know many of my clients have said, I don't have time for a CEO day. And it doesn't have to be a day. I actually prefer to do 1 hour every week. So I have what I call a CEO power hour, which is, I like it on Monday morning, but it doesn't have to be The key here is that it's a set time and it's the same time every week because we're creatures of habit, whether we like it or not. And so it's a non-negotiable 1 hour in your calendar. You know it happens every Monday or every Friday or whenever that is. And it's just as important as your next sales call.
And what are you doing during that time, Donna? What tasks do you recommend that the CEO do?
Great question. What I do for that is really focus on where I am and where I want to go. So how has the last week, how has the last month been? And when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at a few things. Yes, I'm looking at my revenue because I do have a goal and I want to make sure I don't get halfway through the year and then realize, oh, I'm nowhere near my goal, right? And so I do track that weekly and monthly. That also gives me a chance to be proactive. So if I'm a little bit behind and I've got some people over here that I'm thinking about I could reach out to, or I could do a flash sale if I've got digital products, then I can be proactive and put that in place to reach my revenue goal for that month. So I look at my revenue. I look at how I'm bringing new people into my world. Whether you're building an email list, that could be request for proposal. That could be whatever it is in your business, but how are new people finding you? And are you consistently bringing new people in? Because that's what you need to grow. So I'm looking at those things. And then I'm looking at what are my goals and my priorities. So this is a whole bigger conversation, but I like to take my 12-month goals, break them down into 90-month goals, and then break them down into monthly goals. And then from there, it's a lot easier to say, what are my weekly goals? What's the next step I have to take to get to the end? Because when we think about the big goal, okay, I want to launch a new program. I want to write a book. Those are great and wonderful, but they're huge. And for most of us, I don't know where to start. So I get overwhelmed and I don't. So I take that big chunk, break it down to little pieces, and I'm like, okay, today I need to think about what I'm going to put in this offer. How is it going to transform the lives of the people that are going to be in it? Or today I'm going to start looking at, if I was to write a book, what kind of things would I have in it? Do I want to find a book coach, etc.? So by breaking that down, I see what my priorities are, and then I pick 3 of them. 3, not 7, not 10, not 12, just 3.
How do you pick those 3?
So those 3 align with what my goals are for the year.
For the year or for that month?
They're for the month, but from the month, I broke it down from the year so that it's all in alignment.
Right.
And that helps to break shiny object syndrome, which we all have. Oh, wait, I just heard Robert's doing this and it's working really well for his business. Maybe I should. Okay, is that in alignment with my goals? You got to put those blinders on. It might still be a good idea and it might really work for your business. But if it's not now, it's got to go in that idea parking lot.
I love that. And you're right. We do have shiny object syndrome, each and every one of us. And then so often when you're allocating your time, because time is the most precious thing, right? And when you're sitting there going, okay, I have 20 tasks to take care of overall, I've identified 20 things. So I'm going to allocate 5% of my time to each one of these 20 things. We all know how far we get along. We end up with just about that same ratio where we're only 5% complete of each one of those tasks. So I really, really like that. Can you share with us, just so that our audience can visualize exactly what happens when you step in to help someone with that breakthrough, with any of those maybe restrictions, limiting beliefs, the structure, the system of their business? Can you give us a little testimonial or an example of where your practice has been applied and helped someone with breakthrough?
Yes, 100%. So I remember working with a client. She was a course creator and she sold courses to people who had just graduated from university in a certain health program. So in her eyes, her people were young and therefore on every social media channel. So she had one full-time social media assistant and she can't keep up with all the posting that I need her to do everywhere, remember? And so I need to hire another one, but I'm concerned about the budget. So I said, okay, before we even look at the financial numbers, let's look at the data of what people are doing with the posts that you're putting. So when we look on the back end 2 channels, we're actually making a difference. Instagram and Facebook. So on Facebook, people were responding. They were signing up for the webinar. They were downloading the free thing. They were actually following the CTA. On Instagram, it was more about brand awareness. And so they were sharing and liking. We weren't getting a lot of clicks through there. The other channels, almost silence. So we have a person here working full time, trying to get momentum on channels where her audience weren't paying attention. So that was the first eye opener that, wait a second, okay, I can just double down on these 2 channels and not worry about whatever it is, the 7 or 9 other ones, right? And that also helped her social media assistant because now she could just focus on the 2, not have to worry about the algorithms changing here, there, and everywhere, and really try and deliver high quality on 2 channels. And then that relieved the whole budget because we didn't need to hire another person. The person she had was enough. So really just in that time, looking at it through the 30,000 foot view, that bird's eye view, seeing what the data shows. Because the data is there, it tells a story. We just have to take the time to actually look at it.
Wow, so true. What are you doing with the data? We all want metrics. We all claim that we want the data, but what are we physically doing with the data? How are we reacting to that? And I love that because so many of us need to do a little checkup like that. So often we're advertising on every single channel there is because we want the brand awareness. And there's nothing wrong with brand awareness if you want to show up in the marketplace everywhere. But where are you spending your energy, right?
Yes.
Who's your target audience and where are they spending their energy?
Yes.
I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Before we dive back in, I want to share something I've seen again and again. When business feels stuck, it's not always strategy. It's often misalignment. That's what inspired me to create the Universal Brand Alignment Method. It's a course that helps entrepreneurs reconnect with who they truly are and how they're meant to lead so that their message finally lands. So if you're ready for your brand to reflect your truth, then head to brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. That's brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Donna, so you talk about systems and strategic moves. So what's one system or strategic move that you have seen repeatedly to create momentum for your clients?
I would say definitely automation is becoming bigger and bigger as we move forward. So we all have a lot of software tools that we're using.
Too many?
So all of that, they all have some sort of automation behind the scenes. And so really helping my clients look at, okay, this is the process, right? We want to get from A to B. Here are all the steps. How can we do it easier? How can we do it faster with less humans involved, but still providing that human touch? Because none of us want a fully automated. We're not even involved, and the buyer doesn't even realize there's an actual human behind this business. So we want that human touch, but little things along the way make a huge difference. And I know my clients will say to me all the time, oh, but this only takes me 5 minutes.
But it takes you 5 minutes 5 times a day. And 5 times a day times 5 days a week. Why can't you just automate something so small?
Exactly. And if you do that for 5 different tasks, you're really saving your time. And for most of us, when we get in there, oh, but I'll just do that too while I'm here. So if we're honest, that 5 minutes is usually longer than the 5 minutes we think it takes.
Someone did a survey a few years ago, and they said to a bunch of CEOs, executives, what do you think the average time that you spend on social media? When you pick up your phone and you look at Facebook and you see a post, and almost every single person said they think they spend about 5 to 10 minutes a day scrolling through social media. And we all know, right, that vortex. You may be looking at that one post or reading something, but it leads you down the next thing. And maybe that piece of content that intrigues you makes you Google the next source. And then before you know it, I'm looking at 6 or 7 sources. And you're right, it is a time killer when we think about block timing. The other thing that I find interesting when it comes to how we spend our time is even in the process of how we prospect. So if we're looking at monetizing, and I'd love your spin on this, when we're thinking about how we bring in a client, right, through some type of a landing page or a lead magnet, and then taking them from that stage into more of a discovery and then with some type of an offer. I always felt that it had to be me involved in that whole process because no one knows my product and service better than myself. However, and I've shared this with my co-hosts before, I've done big events from stage where I have a call to action to everyone. Then I'm spending 2 months on the call, right? Doing these 10, 15, 20, 30-minute discovery calls to find out that 80% of that audience wasn't even my audience. Now, it's great for relationship building, and I'm not saying that there wasn't value in that. Quite honestly, I wasted a lot of time getting to that point. I love this idea of the discovery process when you say automating on the front end, finding out who your audience is before they ever get in your calendar. Can you give us examples of that?
Yes, for sure. So again, nowadays, because of all the tools we have, you can set up a sequence, whether that's email, whether that's a private podcast where they're hearing your voice, that's starting that relationship. So what you're saying in there is leading them. It's almost like breadcrumbs, if you will, leading them to your offer. And that will attract as well as repel. We've all seen people where they join a list, maybe they're there for a few weeks, and boom, they're gone. And to some entrepreneurs, I think, oh, I'm losing people. No, that's a good thing because you're segmenting, you're really focusing on who really wants to hear from you and who your target audience is. So whether that's through email, whether that's through a private podcast, I mean, some people are doing quizzes as their lead magnet. There's lots of ways to really have your personality show without having your time.
So, what about team and delegation? I found myself working on a project last night and I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And I said, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to do XYZ. And then I said, wait a minute, why am I even doing this? I immediately contacted a VA and I said, here, are you able to do this? And I added her to the back end of the system I was using. And now I don't have to worry about it. But a lot of people, like you say, they want to take everything on. So, how do they step into that leadership role? How do they figure out what they should be delegating and what that looks like for their business?
Yes, good question. And for a lot of people, delegation is hard. It's not a muscle they're used to using, especially within their own business. Because you start, you're by yourself, you're doing it all. You might bring someone on, you think, okay, I'll have them do this. But there could be 10 other things, like you say, that they could do, but it hasn't registered with you yet. And then being able to actually give them that and let them be autonomous with it and do it without you stepping in and fixing or trying to control it. It's difficult. And it is a muscle we have to use to grow.
I think that is the hardest thing any entrepreneur can do is to delegate. It takes me too long to train them the way I want it to be done. I can do it easier myself. What do you say to them when they tell you those things?
Yeah. So, two pieces of this. I think we have to remember that when we hire someone, it does take some time to get them up to speed. And it is our responsibility as leader to have some of those things in place for them. Whether that's a fancy SOP or it's just a video of you doing the thing, they need some information to know. So, yes, there is some time up front, but I always say to my clients, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. So if you're willing to guide them through it,
Train somebody new to come in to work the desk or to work the cash register. You have to take out your time, but then you can step out.
yes. And the other piece of this, which again, I have to use a lot with my clients, is let's look at the objective data. So I'm a business owner. I want some new images made in Canva. I could put a task in my project management tool and assign it to a VA. Or you know what? I could just jump in Canva. I like creating anyways. I could just jump in there and do it, right? So I say to the business owner, okay, how long did it take you to make those images? Well, I was in there about an hour. Right. What's your hourly rate? What's your team member's hourly rate? Now it's really obvious that we're not charging the business that amount, but we're costing the business that amount when we've got a team member there ready, willing, able, but we didn't give them the tools to be able to let them do it, right? So as Starr said, gave them access. I said, I want this, that, and that. I maybe showed them what good looks like so they have something to compare it to, and it's off my plate.
Yeah, that's so true. And that is a hard transition. But the SOPs, like you said, even if they're just very basic SOPs, are so critical at any level in business. And when we're walking through those steps, we don't think often about recording the steps that it took to finally have a finished product. But what a beautiful tool. And most people I know, most clients that come in that say they've tried VAs and they just don't work, they don't like VAs, it's usually because they've given them very limited data and information to go by. Quite honestly, I feel bad for the VA because I know what it would be like to try to extract teeth and information from this person on the other side of the screen. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. That is so key.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't have to be as big as a corporate onboarding procedure, but we need to think in that realm.
I was just going to say that, start a Loom video, right? By the way, VAs love Loom videos.
I would like for you to share one powerful question that every founder or CEO entrepreneur should ask themselves during their next planning session. You're talking about all the planning sessions to do every Monday. What is that one powerful question that they can ask themselves?
I think it really looks at let's be clear and real about the time I have this week. Common problem I have, I work with a lot of visionaries. They're traveling either for personal or for business, and they forget to actually look at their calendar and the reality of it. I'll fly in at this time and I'll get this and this and that done. No, where's the buffer? If I'm gone 3 days this week, then I can't expect to complete the same number of tasks and priorities as when I'm doing my regular schedule. So allowing that buffer time and giving yourself grace.
That is so true. Have you ever caught yourself saying, I'll just double down or play catch up next week or this day? It's almost an impossible thing because we're still faced with not just the activities on your calendar, but the uncertain things too, right? Those variables that come in on a regular basis.
And I've got to a point where I believe my to-do list will never end. And that's okay. I can go to bed. I can have a good night's sleep. I can go to the kids' game. I can go out with friends, and it will wait.
My wife is a great reminder. So if we can systematize my wife for others, that would be perfect. She's constantly telling me that. I'm sitting there many times. I have those days where I needed 6 things done today, and you have 4 done. And I'm one of those that goes, oh my goodness, how late am I going to be working tonight to get this done? And then she'll bring that reality check back in. Are your clients up at 11 p.m. waiting? And I'm like, no. And she's like, exactly. Let's get some sleep. She's looking at me going, you already wake up at 5:30 in the morning every day anyways. You'll probably have it done before most people are awake drinking their first cup of coffee. I'm like, you're right. I really do need to just, so it's that reality check. I love that. And in thinking of that, in your experience of working with many different people in the CEO mindset, what are one of the most common things that you see right off the bat that someone can take a look at and immediately either delegate it to someone or create a system around it? What do you see quite often?
The first step for me is always to do a time audit. And I know when I say that, the eyeballs roll. I think, oh, that's like the worst thing. I don't want to spend any of my time doing that. But the gold that we get out of that, the golden nuggets that we get out of it, then really help decide what the next step is. What are those things originally that you think we're bringing in? Do we change it up or do we stop it completely? And it's okay to stop something. Second thing, what can be automated that you're still doing? If you have someone to delegate to, what could be delegated that you're still doing? So after we go through those 3 things, now we've cleared a lot off the plate. And what's left should be those most important growth tasks.
I love that. And most people are surprised when they think they are time bankrupt. When you free up that time for them, it's amazing the productivity that can happen. I think each one of us can speak on that in our own lives and business. Amazing. So when someone wants to just reach out and connect with you, are there ways that they can already start to tap into some of the information and the content and the knowledge that you're sharing? I mean, obviously you have the podcast, correct?
So that's the best place if they want to tap in and say, I kind of like what she's saying. I want to hear more. Then the CEO Amplify is the best place to do that. I do weekly episodes. They're just solo episodes, just me. But where we dive into each of these a little bit further, I describe and go through some of my frameworks, some tricks and tips and tools that you can use along the way.
Excellent. And then in regards to connecting with you, which we'll have all that listed, of course, when we roll out this episode, But should someone go to your website first, find you on social media, set up an appointment that way?
So the best place is the website. I will say I'm an operator through and through. So I do some social media, but marketing is not my jam. So yes, through the website is the best way to do that.
Where it's fully automated. And until you get to her, she will have all your questions answered.
Yes.
Quite honestly, it tells me that you're very good at your job, because if you're not spending a lot of time on social media, you're doing something right, Donna.
Thank you.
This was like a trigger for me this week. I definitely felt a burnout last week, and things happen because you try to do so much for everyone and then you forget to back up and do other things for yourself.
Yes. I remember working with a client and she had one VA at the time who was part-time, and that VA was going back to school. So she was humming and hawing, am I going to hire another VA? I'll just do the things myself. Okay, but if you're going to add that on, you have to look at that time. You can't expect to do the things you were doing. Plus, sometimes we're not honest and real.
How much actual time do you spend on social media? How much actual time do you spend scrolling on TikTok? How much time do you spend going over things that you could have delegated that you're going over to make sure that they sound perfect?
Absolutely. I know first and foremost, I'm super excited to tap into your podcast, to some of the content that you're putting out there. All just said reveals these gaps that we all have. And we're going, you know what? I really do need to spend a little bit more time honing in on these things. And I know it's superficial to think, well, we're rolling into the new year, coming up with new ways of doing business, but it is a great time to reflect on how we can continue to move forward in business and to reclaim our time.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, I'll do it in the new year, get them done now and have them in place for the new year.
Yeah, because if you set a goal and say, okay, I want to automate 5 things in my business in Q4, that's 5 things now off your plate coming in the new year.
I love it. And I can't wait. Do you have any other type of events coming up, or do you do, other than one-on-one coaching, do you have some coursework?
I don't have coursework, no. So it is one-on-one coaching or coming inside the business as a fractional director of ops. So to manage team projects, that sort of thing. But certainly if something resonated with you today, then check out the podcast. I think that's the best way to go.
And I would agree. And I very much appreciate your time. It's hard to capture everything that you do in just a matter of 30, 40 minutes. What is one last major thing that you'd like to leave as a piece of advice, maybe, or just any type of a nugget for our audience and yours?
One of my favorite authors is James Clear. And so one of the quotes from his book is that the myth is that there isn't enough time. There's more than enough time. The situation is what we do with that time. I think that ties nicely to what we were talking about today. And one of those I have on my wall to remind me day to day.
That is so, so true. By the way, that just made me reflect back on a project I did within corporate America, where they were ultimately trying to figure out the 40-hour week versus the 50-hour week. When we dove in and peeled back the layers, we realized that everyone was actually only working effectively for about 28 hours a week. It's amazing. So when we think that you need to have this much time allocated, but you actually look at the true productivity time and how that applies to your tasks, your roles, etc., it usually isn't a full week, which means you have more time for family, friends, and all the things that really matter.
For sure. And we all know that. How many times have we said, oh, I'm going to get out for a walk? Ideas flow. You feel so much better because you stepped away.
I have that on my list, exercise more. And I can't honestly say that I put it at the top of my priority list at times. It usually seems to be the one thing, like preparing dinner or doing something that brings joy in your life. You put them there with all good intentions, and they're the first things that you scratch off when the busyness and the overwhelm and the burnout starts to kick in. I like that idea of making that a very mindful thing daily. Thank you again, Donna, for being on the show, and look forward to finding out a great deal about you and everything that you have going on in the future. We appreciate your time, and thank you for taking your time to be on our show.
Thank you. It's fun sharing.
Thank you so much, Donna.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. If you're getting value from the show, Take a minute to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you tune in. It helps more bold entrepreneurs find us. Until next time, keep showing up, uncensored and unapologetic. And we'll catch you on the next episode.